Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. In my daily show, I interview today's latest best-selling, buzziest, or underrated authors and story creators whose work I think is worth your time. As a bookstore owner, publisher, author, and obviously podcaster, I get a comprehensive look at everything that's coming out and spend my time curating the best books so you don't have to. Stay in the know, get insider insights, and connect with guests like I do every single day. For more information, go to zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. Kate Price is the author of This Happened to Me, A Reckoning. Kate is an associate research scientist at the Wellesley Centers for Women, a gender-based research institute at Wellesley College. She is also a senior research scholar at the Global Association of Human Trafficking Scholars, an advisor for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Child Sex Trafficking Expert Working Group, and Global Platform for Child Exploitation Policy, and an alumni scholar at the Brandeis University Women's Studies Research Center. An internationally recognized child sex trafficking expert and lecturer, Price's research has influenced the passage of state-level children's human rights legislation. Price is the recipient of a My Life, My Choice Beacon of Light Award, a Conrad N. Hilton Humanitarian Prize Medal, a Miriam K. Chamberlain Dissertation Award from the International Centers for Research on Women, and an American Association of University Women Dissertation Fellowship. She has worked extensively with trauma pioneers Dr. Bessel Kolk, author of the New York Times bestselling book The Body Keeps the Score, in which Price is featured, and Dr. Judith Herman. Price received her MA in Gender and Cultural Studies from Simmons College and earned her PhD in Sociology from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She lives in Massachusetts with her family. Welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for coming on Totally Booked with Zibby to talk about This Happened to Me, a memoir. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Powerful does not begin to describe this book. This is like a gut punch, and you are such a good writer, and your story is just unreal, really unbelievable. What you got through yourself and the way that you processed it and wrote about it and shared it with us, it's like genius. So thank you. Thank you for writing it, and my heart just like goes out to you in every way.
That's very kind. Thank you for your kind words.
Why don't you tell listeners what the book is about?
Okay. So the book is really ultimately about healing and truth. From my father sexually abused me from a very early age until age 12 when he left our home. And during that time, he also sold me for sex to truckers along Route 80, an interstate that runs very near my childhood home in northern Appalachia. So the book really is about me grappling, so one, surviving that, and then two, grappling with my memory and ultimately healing.
Kate, how can you just sit and calmly say that? And you have to say it over and over again doing publicity for this book? How are you dealing with that?
I say it all of the time because I'm actually a researcher. That's my area of study is child sex trafficking, particularly domestically, but also internationally. I think for a multitude of reasons, I meditate every day. Wellness is a huge part of my life and managing my PTSD. I was also extraordinarily lucky to meet Dr. Bessel Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score, of which I am in. He's been my therapist for for about 30 years now. We met when I was working at Harvard University, and my therapist at the time saw him speak when I was in my mid-20s, when I was really just starting to dive into all of this. And I became one of his most successful patients with the EMDR when that was still a very new and controversial modality. So he helped save my life. He's been very much of a guide for me. And we joke that I don't see him that often now, but we joke that we are both the head of each other's mutual admiration society.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you wrote in detail about all of your sessions with him and how that all happened. And I found that absolutely fascinating. How did your body keep the score?
How did my body? First, I just want to say I was having those sessions, and there was very intentional for me because one of the primary reasons I wrote this book was when I was healing from all of this, I needed a roadmap. And
Mm-hmm.
this was all so new and overwhelming, and what was going on. And I didn't have a roadmap, and I needed that. So I wanted to, and people not just healing from sexual trauma, but really any trauma. So I wanted to be very transparent. And so in consort with Bessel, I wrote those and he signed off on them, and so it was very much of I see it as a public service announcement in a way. And then in terms of how my body kept the score was throughout childhood, I would pass the rest area where I was being trafficked. And I would just feel weird, and it was, I just didn't know, but I was just in survival mode, at that point. And then I would have flashbacks and just various points. And so much of this was so spot on developmentally, in adolescence, in my teens, in my 20s. I was suicidal, in my teens and early 20s, of course, because I have no idea what's happening. But then really once I moved to Boston and Cambridge, in 12-step programs, it's called the geographical cure. It's like I had that distance, physical and increasing emotional distance. And my body just felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt safe, for the first time. I started working at Harvard, like my academic career was really starting, and I was just building my own life. And it all came flooding out because it was safe and it was terrifying. And yet by that time, I really had the scaffolding built around me that when all of that happened, I could pick up the phone, and say, I'm in danger, and then had a plan, with Bessel, but also with my other therapist. And I still have those things, to a degree, in terms of just, it's in the book, my husband and I call it Kate management skills. It's like so much of it is how to I still just have to manage my PTSD, every single day.
Oh my gosh. Well, the way that you wrote about all of this and took us with you, and just to back up with the abuse, for listeners who aren't aware, your dad would also inject you or have you drink medicine that at the end of the book, you weren't exactly sure still what it was. We don't know, but something that he found, perhaps he worked in a hospital, something he managed to procure that made you black out and, pass out theoretically the whole time. You're not even sure. So that is how he was able. And you write in the book about him waking up in the morning in your nightgown with like no underwear. Oh my gosh, Kate, it was just because you were so young. And I don't want to over dramatize, because this is your life and you wrote about it very factually and whatever. It's just, as a reader, and I'm sure you will experience this time and again, like, it is, the reader is going to be processing and reflecting it back to you sort of the way. So I'm sure you're ready for that. But anyway, I'm falling into that. I'm falling into that camp. One of the things that you wrote about, which struck a chord with me, we were joking ahead of this about like what in our lives make us so similar, but you wrote about Judy Blume and how those books got you through. Can I just read this little passage you wrote about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. You said, okay, you wrote, this is chapter 11. The idea of sex, intimacy, and the emotions around them are confusing for any adolescent. In my case, my mind dissolved into a morass around these topics. I couldn't square the explicit pornographic images my father gleefully showed me in private with the anatomical health films about puberty my classmates and I watched, red-faced in embarrassed silence. It felt shameful to view either of these, yet I wasn't exactly sure why. To bridge the gap, I, like millions of other kids, discovered Judy Blume. Her books didn't just comfort me, they helped keep me alive and were among the few things that kept me going. I found relief and reassurance in the way she celebrated life's messiness and addressed unspeakable topics such as depression, hormones, sexual desire, and sibling rivalry. She was authentic, real, and her courageous characters made me feel less alone. Oh my gosh. Talk about that and the solace you found in books.
I get teary, like even hearing that. The research shows that children who are enduring anything in terms of trauma, difficult life situations, if there is one safe adult in their life, it increases or decreases their risk of suicidality, depression, all of these things. And people always say to me, who is that person for you in your life? And for me, it was Judy Blume. She was some amorphous person out there, and she really did help save my life. I mean, that's what you asked earlier in terms of like, how does your body keep the score? All of this, Judy Blume was really my first safe adult, truly. And to have her voice in books just meant the absolute world to me. I mean, books saved my life. In high school, then it was J.D. Salinger, who was a complicated individual, but reading The Catcher in the Rye was the first time I read a trauma novel. I mean, that's what it's really about, is trauma in my experience. And so just those words, it gave me access to, I knew that there was someone sane out there, and someone who saw me. And knowing, later, I forget what year it came out, but her book, Letters to Judy, kids were writing her. That phenomenal documentary that just came
Mm-hmm.
out, she developed really strong interpersonal relationships with some children. It never even occurred to me to write to her. I mean, I just wouldn't have done that. But to know that other people did and that she took that seriously came across in the page, like even though I knew it on some level, and she was just a level of comfort and safety for me. And I felt her presence, in the library, in my town library. That was also my safe space that helped keep me alive.
Have you told Judy Blume that?
Not yet. I've tried.
Oh my gosh. Can I connect you? I just had her on my podcast.
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely love that. I probably will be a blubbering idiot, like so many people, just like dissolve at her feet, but
Well, let me try. I'll email you both.
I would be honored. I would be
But
so honored.
she should know. I mean, it's one thing to know that your book reaches millions, right? That's just like a sentence, but
Yeah.
it's the individual effects of the books. Isn't this why everybody writes? Like you're going to have this with your readers too.
Connection, absolutely. I mean, this is one thing I really know is that it's been said, isolation is the glue that holds oppression in place. That
Mm.
was very much the case of what my father did to me and Sissy. My sister really kept us isolated from one another. And books, I really do believe, are ultimately about connection. We are a species of meaning makers. We are a species of storytellers. And so the very fact that I've survived all I've survived and can write about it, how could I not? It also helps that I'm married to a journalist who very early in our marriage was like, who really showed me the power of journalism. And this was also kind of around the time that Spotlight had come out. And so I could just really see, the power of journalism. And then once I did work with a journalist for 10 years and we were able to really get to the bottom of my story, it really became time, to write the book as well. So having him along with me as a journalist, and then he's also an author. Sports, a little bit, lighter. I'm a huge baseball fan. So that's where we really connect, but that's really helped me feel very, very, very familiar and comfortable with the journalistic process as well as the publishing industry.
Well, both of those that you wrote about in the book were such a big relief to me as the reader reading your life, because of course you end up in a series of horrific relationships in the aftermath of what happened with your father. And then when you met your husband, I was like, oh, yay, he's such a nice guy. I hope they end up together. Like, let's see what happens. And then you do, spoiler, but it's in your bio, but so whatever. But I'm just so glad you were able to make a meaningful relationship with somebody so awesome. And then the journalist is also another key, Janelle, I think her name's Janelle.
Janelle Nanos, yes.
Janelle Nanos. The two of you like going through it together, and the patience and all the steps you had to take to kind of build this case, and the vindication you felt when you were like, oh my gosh, it wasn't just me. I didn't make this up, even though you knew you didn't make it up, but just when you found the proof. Oh my gosh. Like, how does that feel now? And also, what about like any sort of prosecution? Your father at the end of the book is denying everything. Is there anything next?
Let me take that in a few steps.
Okay.
One, Janelle is phenomenal. She was a Pulitzer Prize finalist for the article that she wrote about our 10-year journey together. And the fact that it took us 10 years was so important because so many things needed to happen. During that time, the Me Too movement happened. Sandusky
Mm-hmm.
happened, Jerry Sandusky. I grew up 45 minutes east of State College. And so all of these things that we think, people are just making it up, like people just are beginning to believe survivors more and more, which to me is the biggest takeaway when people read my story or read any story and they say they feel so helpless. It's like, what can I do? And for me, it is truly believe survivors. It has been said that everyone knows a victim, but no one knows a perpetrator. And so it's like just that ability to hide and cover up is such an important part of how sexual violence or any domination, control, domestic violence continues to happen. So that silence and silencing victims is incredibly important. And then in terms of what's next, there's really nothing next. For now, the end of the book is how everything is ending. And yet I'm also thrilled to say that I continue to spend time in my hometown, doing a lot of advocacy work on policy, on practice. I'm on various task forces, policy advisory groups, because ultimately I cannot abandon the children in my hometown the way that my sister and I were abandoned.
Wow. And your town really does become sort of complicit in this in a way, in the silence and the people who suspected but didn't say anything and the culture. I mean, it wasn't just you. I mean, this is generations of behavior, suicidality in your family. I mean, this is a lot. And there are just some places where these types of things are just not talked about and sanctioned. And it's hard to believe in today's day and age, but it's true.
It is true. And I think there's definitely a regional aspect to Appalachia. It is very isolated. It is very clannish. I mean, we're mostly have Scots and Irish, ancestors. So all of that, as we know with epigenetics, it's very deep in our bones. It's survival. And yet ultimately, as I've learned, as I've spoken to more and more people, family secrets are ubiquitous.
Mm-hmm.
I love Danny Shapiro's Family Secrets podcast. And it just shows, that's really, that happens everywhere. And so much of it is about family reputation and, all of these. And I don't want to, go down that rabbit hole. But while the particular kind of violence and the particular kind, the way the family secrets were kept, I think is very regional and specific to Appalachia. I don't think that they are special, in any way, shape, or form. Family secrets are everywhere. And that's another big reason why I wanted to do the book, because I cannot tell you how many survivors I have met around my age or a little bit older who have lost a sibling to suicide because their family members would not believe them. So I just really wrote this. Ultimately, I really wrote it for anyone who's endured trauma or is enduring trauma, but really in terms of familial commercial sexual exploitation of children, survivors and victims, it is so isolating and you are so, what would be the word? Gaslit, just so those secrets are so at the core. And this is your family. I mean, this is the people who are supposed to be protecting you. This is the people that society assumes are protecting you. And then if it's quite the opposite, boy, are the odds really stacked against you.
Oh my gosh. Can I read one more
Of
section?
course, I'd be
Okay.
honored.
Okay. My Al Anon meeting revelation that my abuse wasn't my fault had slammed me like a tsunami rushing in from outside of my consciousness. But this, it washed over me slowly like a calm rising tide, eroding the shoddy foundation of a beachfront mansion that had been built to house my father's pulsing secrets. My relentless work to heal had eaten away at the facade, delivering me to this moment. All of the work I had done to heal must have opened my mind's floodgates. Finally, secure enough to face the truth, the house of lies was falling away. And with that, the ground shuddered as each room broke free, filling with frothy waves carrying the reality of my exploitation. I tried to fly up into the corner, dissociating like I had done in my bedroom whenever my father abused me as a child, yet the corners kept disappearing as the rooms collapsed around me, freed by my readiness to face the veracity of my childhood. Oh, it's so powerful. How do you feel like going back and revisiting these moments, these and the collapse moment that we kind of knew was coming all through the book, and then finally, like, whoosh comes? How do you feel?
I feel a tremendous sense of relief. The book just poured out of me. It took me about 3 years to write the prologue, which I wrote during my investigation with Janelle. I would work on it in my hometown, and that took 3 years, but then really once Janelle and I finished our investigation and I was just really putting things together, it all just poured right out of me. It reminds me so much of the tremendous work of Melissa Febos, who I love so much in terms of writing and getting, just the corporeal experience, the bodily experience of writing and how much we hold. And I see a trainer and I do a lot of stretching and things. And so just even her teaching me that release of what we hold in our fascia and what we hold in our hips and what we hold in our feet. And so all of that it just being very difficult because for so long, as that passage mentions, I would just dissociate. I would go fly out of my body. And so learning to stay in my body and then release it in a healthy way instead of just disappearing has been a huge part of that process.
And you've become, in your professional life, just incredibly accomplished. You are a fighter. You fight child trafficking worldwide. You are like a total badass. Talk about your career and how you've turned your trauma into such a forceful professional existence.
Thank you. So I am an associate research, I'm sorry, this is a new position for me, an associate research scientist at the Wellesley Centers for Women, which is a research institute at Wellesley College. And the basis of our work here, of all of the work done here, is research and action. So it is not to say being an academic, in terms of just doing research and then publishing scholarly research that maybe 5 or 10 or 40 people are going to read. For me, it was really how do we create scientific knowledge that then does get published in journals, but then can translate to policy and practice. And so that is incredibly important to me. Very honored to say that myself and my mentor and colleague, we are embarking on the first, that I know of, the first national study on familial commercial sexual exploitation in the United States. So we're doing some pilot studying work now, and then we're seeking funding for a larger 5-year study that really will get to not only the victimology, not only to get to victims' experiences, but talking to non-offending family members, talking to traffickers, to buyers, to service providers, and to criminal legal system agents as well, and doing a mapping to really see how does this happen. I know how this happened now through my experience. I know it anecdotally from the amazing community of survivors that I am a part of. But now the intention is, and we will create scientific empirical knowledge about how this happens.
That's amazing. That's so great. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. And can I also just say, I would have been a sociologist no matter what had happened to me. I see the need to find chicken plucker when I'm 6 years old. Like that's my first sociological interview. It's like I'm just needing to know that truth that sparked very early in me. And it's just a huge part of who I am. And as I discuss, research has been a huge part of my healing. And so that's for me, that's why it's so, I think everyone's healing path is so individual. And for me, it's just the way my mind works. And so that's what I did. And that's what I continue to do.
Oh my gosh. Well, I wish you could go back to the girl and her friend who snuck into the truck and turned on the CB radio and all of that and made that first crackly conversation. Fast forward to now. Like, if only you could fast forward through some of the heartbreak in the intervening years, but how vindicating.
Very much, very much.
At the end of the book, you talked about wanting to open a bookstore, Mill Girl Books. Is that what's going on with that?
We're waiting right now. And, I don't want to give away too much, but for me, it is a way to continue that legacy of and not just a bookstore. I do writing workshops in my hometown at the library. That was so important to me. And just that continuation of how can I continue that legacy of making books and writing available to children, I could never afford books really when I was a kid. I would, my Judy Blume every once in a while, but then once my father left and we could, didn't even have enough food to eat, books were not on the table, So for me to be able to provide books for kids who want them, who can't afford them, that is another way that I see that I can do direct service in my hometown. And that's incredibly, incredibly important to me.
So what advice can you give to someone who is going through something they don't know if they can bear?
I think the biggest thing is you're not alone. You might be physically alone because you have been isolated by people around you, by people who are controlling you. Like people know exactly what they're doing in terms of that because they know your power and the power of people around you. And so what we always say in our family, in our immediate family, me, my husband, and my son, is bet on yourself. We're not gamblers. And at the same time, as my husband, a journalist, myself as an aspiring academic, and now our son has his own entrepreneurial dreams, it's bet on yourself. Just know you'll get through it. You might not have the answer right now. You might not even have the answer for 10 years. You might not even have the answer for 30 or 40 or 50 years, but it's there. And it will reveal itself to you when things are safe.
Oh my gosh, Kate, this happened to me, a memoir. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. Bravo. And thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you loved the show, tell a friend, leave a review, follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and spread the word. Thanks so much. Oh, and buy the books.